Do you want to know where to go fishing this weekend in Sydney in summer? All the secret spots and a few tips to help you be really successful at catching some fish this weekend. Well, stick around to the end because I've got a secret tip that's going to change your fishing experience. Let's start with the fishing report and let's find out what's been biting around Sydney over the past week. Well, the mahi-mahi have started to come in plague proportions, especially around the fads out of Sydney. The fads out of Sydney Harbour, Botany Bay and the Port Hacking have all been producing some nice sized mahi-mahi. People going out there using live baits and slow trolling them right past the fads have been producing some really nice fish. There's also been some really nice kingfish action inside the harbour, particularly around the Spit Bridge and the areas around the Spit Bridge there. There's been some nice kings on the points and stuff like that because of that really strong run-in tide last week. The kings were absolutely on fire in the harbour. A few caught in Botany Bay around Dole's Point, and there were also a few caught in the Port Hacking around Southwest Arm. On the weekend, I went out fishing surface, looking for some salmon and kingfish, managed to find a heap of salmon and not too many kingfish. The kingfish seemed to be around the reefs and hanging a bit lower. They weren't up on the surface as much as the salmon. The salmon were targeting little eyes and you could see them skipping along the surface, and all you had to do was cast in front of where they were heading, use your surface lure. So I had a Daiwa slippery dog and absolutely slayed the salmon on them. Last one I want to talk about as well, because the winds were up last weekend and not a lot of people wanted to go out in the rivers, a lot of people headed west and went for bass fishing and targeted Australian bass. There were heaps about. Heaps of people catching them early morning on surface, and if they weren't, they were using spinner baits in the snags from about 8:30 onwards to be able to catch some nice Australian bass. Very cool to see. And like I said in last week's fishing report, we should see a bumper bass season. There's a lot of cicadas about, and there's predicted by the Bureau of Meteorology a lot of cicadas that are going to be about this year. So cicadas are going to be the #1 bait to use to target your bass this summer. Before we get into fishing this weekend, I want to thank Seven Seas Apparel. Again, Seven Seas Apparel has been around with reel fishing for many years now, and they've just sent me some brand new merch. We've got the brand new Seven Seas Apparel t-shirt. It also comes in a singlet, and there's going to be 2 fresh fishing jerseys soon released. You can pre-order some of those fishing jerseys now, but also you can hop online and grab some of this fresh merch from Seven Seas Apparel. And don't forget to use code REALFISHING10 to save yourself 10% off anything Seven Seas Apparel. They are high quality fishing apparel. So that's what's been biting around Sydney. Let's get into where to go fishing this weekend. And let's look at Saturday. First things first, it's a typical summer's day on Saturday, what's been predicted. And again, please make sure you're checking the weather apps before you head out fishing, because these are predicted and they could change very quickly. So a typical summer's day, we've got a light northerly breeze in the morning, pushing it at about 15 to 20 kilometers an hour, switching to a nor'easter in the afternoon for about 35 to 40 kilometers an hour. This is what we call our typical summer's day here in Sydney. The swell is about 1 to 1.1 meters across all of Saturday, so heading out offshore, particularly in the morning before that nor'easter comes along, could be a good time to be able to go out and have a fish. Our tide changes, we've got an 8:30 a.m. low tide and a 3 o'clock high tide on Saturday. So let's break Saturday down into 2. We've got our morning and our afternoon. Let's firstly talk about the morning. So if I'm fishing the morning, we've got that run out tide. The high tide's about quarter to 4 in the morning. So the tide should start running out right around that first light. Now, if we're going to stay inside the river, I can target 2 fish. I target my flathead and my whiting. The first thing I'll target is my whiting. I'll head up onto a flat while that tide is running out, target some whiting on surface lures, Daiwa slippery dog, Annamite colour. Great for any sort of whiting stuff this summer. So Port Hacking, some good spots to go are Northwest Arm. There's a few really nice spots in Northwest Arm and Swallow Rock there for whiting on surface. Lily Pilly and Main Bar are also 2 really good ones for whiting. Some people during the week caught some really nice big whiting on surface lures as well. So they're on the chew and ready to get going. If we're going to target our whiting in Botany Bay, Towra, the sand flats around Towra there are also a really, really good one to use. The sand flats around Dole's Point, and moving on up into the Sydney Harbour, if we're targeting sand flathead, we can go to the eastern side of the Spit Bridge. There's some nice sand flats along there as well. They're only small areas, so small sand flats, but when you go out and target them on those run out tides, people have been producing some nice whiting. If you go back to the western side of the Spit Bridge and move all the way up into the river systems there, there's also some really nice flats along there as well. Moving up into the Parramatta River as well, we'll also see some really nice whiting. So that's the whiting in the morning. Once it gets to about 7 o'clock, so we probably fish for the whiting for about an hour and a half, I'm going to be targeting the flathead at the bottom end of that run out tide. Okay, so for me, I'm going to go to Port Hacking, it's my closest system. I'm going to go to Northwest Arm, Lily Pilly, Main Bar, use the drop offs, fishing with soft plastics for some flathead. If you're Botany Bay, Towra, Yowie Bay is another really good one. Dolls Point's a really good one this time of year. And further back, you can go to places like Como, Warrenora. They're really, really good ones for flathead as well. Fishing those drop-offs, that's the biggest key for flathead. Run out tide, drop off using your soft plastics. Daiwa 2.35 inch prawn. This time of year, the little jelly prawns are about, it's dynamite on flathead. You'll catch a 60 plus centimeter flathead on that little 2.35 inch soft plastic. Moving up into the harbour, if we're going to target our flathead in the harbour, places like Parramatta River are really good, especially if you get all the way up into the Parramatta River system. Targeting those rocky foreshore lines that have drop-offs along the sand flats are really, really good ones there. So Parramatta River might be my number one spot for the Sydney Harbour for Saturday. Moving on into the afternoon. Now the afternoon, again, we have a high tide at 3 o'clock and we're targeting that run out tide. Now the difference between the morning run out tide and the afternoon run out tide is the size of the tide. Now the morning one is a lot less than the afternoon. So if we're going to pick one of the two, I'm going to be picking the afternoon tide changes and the afternoon run in and run out tide for both Saturday and Sunday because it is a bigger tide. The fish generally will bite more on that bigger tide. Bait fish have to move around more, they have to work a lot more, and the fish get more active on those bigger tides. Only issue with that is for Saturday, there is quite a strong nor'easterly breeze going to be present throughout the day. So afternoon, yes, it is the best tide, but no, it isn't the best for wind and weather and all that sort of stuff. So if we are going to fish the afternoon, again, we're going to fish that run out tide, whiting on the surface, and you know all the spots that I've mentioned before, and then flathead on that run out tide. It should bite better in the afternoon. All you're doing is using the exact same spots that I said in the morning, in the afternoon. And if you're fishing into that running tide, you might want to target some nice kingfish and all that sort of stuff, and salmon from about 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And then once that tide starts to turn, whiting, flathead, perfect target species for the afternoon. Again, try and stay out of that nor'easter breeze. Think places like the harbour and Port Hacking are really good for that. They've got quite a lot of systems and quite a lot of little arms that you can get out of that nor'easter and be protected for the majority of that afternoon. Botany Bay also has some good ones, like Warrenora is always the best one for any type of wind that is really, really high. Warrenora River and Como area is always really protected. Skinnier water, nice big high-rise buildings around to protect you from the wind. Moving on into Sunday, and the weather forecast for Sunday looks pretty similar to Saturday. We've got a northerly breeze in the morning, 15 to 20 kilometers an hour, pushing to that 35, 40 kilometers an hour in the afternoon. The swell is still roughly the same, 1 to 1.1 meters. We've got a high tide at 4:20 a.m. and then a low tide at 9:50 a.m. and then a high tide again in the afternoon at about 4 p.m. So in the morning, what are we going to target? Again, similar strategies to Saturday, whiting and flathead, but I might add a salmon into that as well and start trying to target a salmon on surface. Now, if the whiting aren't biting really early, and I'm going to make a very quick judgment call as to whether they are, it could also be from the day before. If I don't really catch many whiting on surface on Saturday morning and I head out Sunday morning to target them again and they don't bite within an hour or so, I might change my tactic completely and fish for salmon feeding on surfaces. If we are going to do that, I would head to places like Lilipilli, Southwest Arm for our salmon. They've been all around there lately. Although those extra oversized salmon have sort of dissipated and moved off into Burraneer Bay and been quite hard to find. So we're sort of running into our summer run of salmon, so 30, 40 centimeters rather than those like 60 centimeter, 70 centimeter ones as well. But at the same time, still great fun on surface. They absolutely go hard and really good on fly as well. So if you're going to target them, you've got Southwest Arm, Northwest Arm, Botany Bay. Around the runways there, you'll see some birds working around the runways there. That's generally where the salmon are. The salmon will school and move around those runways and target the bait fish and push them up to the surface, and therefore the birds will start working around there. So Botany Bay is a really good one to be able to watch and make sure you know where the birds are working and when you should head out for a fish there. If we're heading out offshore in the morning, we've got two things that we want to target. We've got mahi-mahi on Sunday morning. Again, 15 to 20 kilometre an hour northerly, tempted to push up to 30, 35 kilometre an hour nor'easter around about 10:30 in the morning. Could be a tough weather window to be able to go out and have a fish. Again, a lot of the times when you head out to the Fads, you are heading in that nor'easter part. So coming back is quite nice. You're going with the breeze rather than into it, and you're going with that following sea as well. So if you do head out and chase a mahi-mahi, try and get out nice and early and target them nice and early, get a few live baits, middle grounds, all that sort of stuff. Being able to grab a nice live bait early, head out to the Fads, have a quick fish, and then head back in before that nor'easter really starts to pump is a really good thing. Kingfish as well. Now, the reefs out off Port Hacking have been producing some nice kingfish quite consistently. Squid, again, has been the number one live bait. If you can find some smaller sized squid, you're going to be well on your way to finding some nice kingfish, particularly some legal kingfish. And then we've seen a lot more rats over the last couple of weeks, and we'll see that increase over the next month or two. The rat kingfish will sort of take over through late November, December, January, and then the bigger fish will start to take over again. You'll see more consistent captures of the bigger fish towards the back end of summer. That's traditionally what's happened in Sydney over the last 6 or 7 years. So it's what we're predicting to happen again. Kingfish out offshore, looking at Osborne Shoal, Mary's Reef, and Jib and Bommy are also really good ones for our kingfish. If we're heading up to Sydney Harbour, Long Reef have been producing some nice kingfish out of there and a few snapper here and about. So if you're not much of a bait fisherman or a live bait fisherman, lures, you might even be able to catch a nice snapper along with a really nice kingfish out of Long Reef. Botany Bay, there's a few nice reefs out off Coogee that are producing some really nice kings. The Peak also has been producing some kings, and the cliffs between Botany Bay and Port Hacking have also been producing some nice kings. So for Sunday afternoon, and that big run-in tide moves into 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then we come for that run-out tide. So I'm going to change two of my target species. I'm only going to target kings and topwater whiting for the afternoon. Kings on that running tide, so I might start fishing for my kings around 1 o'clock and fish till 4 o'clock for kings, whether that be live bait or using soft plastics. And then once that tide rises all the way up to the flats, I'm going to go target my whiting on topwater lures. What I would do, head to Southwest Arm, head to Lilipilly, Gymea Bay or Northwest Arm. All those 4 spots have been producing some really consistent kings in the Port Hacking over the last week or two. If live bait's your thing, use a live bait, slow troll it around. If lures are your thing, throw it around under moored boats, all sorts of structures, sink it down, work it really fast. Use your sounder to your advantage for that. Botany Bay, Dolls Point have been producing some really nice kings around Captain Cook Bridge as well, and the runways, but again, that afternoon nor'easter breeze looks really strong, so it's going to be hard to be out in the bay. So Dolls Point, Captain Cook Bridge, Tom Ugley's Bridge probably looks like your best bet for afternoon kings on Sunday. In the harbour, Spit Bridge, really good one for kingfish, and the western side of that Spit Bridge, all those points and moored boats are going to produce some really nice kings on Sunday afternoon. Topwater whiting, I've explained all the spots in regards to topwater whiting and where you should be heading for that in the afternoon. Once you feel that tide turn, that's the time to head up and start targeting the whiting. The whiting will head up on the high tide and they'll move up with it. They don't necessarily look for a feed straight away. They start really getting aggressive with their feeding is that run out tide. Once it reaches the top end of the tide and it starts to turn and run out, that's when the whiting really start to bite. You will get them on the running tide as the water starts to fill on those flats, but they do bite way more aggressively on that run out tide. And while that water's sort of filling up onto the flat, you can be targeting a king instead, which is a better bite window for them.